Hi, hello. Welcome to the Coaxum Report. This is Terry Coaxum, your executive director and your host, and I am super excited that we're going to be joined by our producer, Anthony Weeks, and co-producer Carolyn Howell. We're going to talk about the SETI case study that we did here in New York, and I am just so excited to have you both on the Coaxum Report today. And for those that are just tuning in to us, you can catch us on our TV. You can also catch us on Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, Roku. And most importantly, I encourage you to download our app. And you can also catch us at WSTX Bloomberg on the radio. How are you guys?
Fabulous. Hi,
I,
Terry. Hi, Anthony.
I'm excited because this is my second special guest appearance
Yeah,
on the Coaching Report.
absolutely.
Love
Yes,
that.
yes.
Yeah,
The last time I was with you was with former Congressman Gregory Meeks
yeah,
when we did
Congressman.
the
Yeah, Gregory Meeks,
yeah,
Foreign Affairs. Yeah,
yes,
absolutely. Yeah, we
yeah,
had a
yeah.
phenomenal conversation that day, and we're going to have an even better conversation today because we did a lot of work here in New York, and we brought the governor here. We visited the stock exchange. We had a lot of great relationships with both the Manhattan Chamber and the Brooklyn Chamber, and so I'm super excited to kind of share that with our listeners today. The SETI case, a New York report. So, Anthony, I'm gonna let you kick this one off. Why don't you tell us about the excitement in the big city and how that was for you? And we're also going to show a few clips from Carolyn and I had an awesome interview with our governor from the U.S. Virgin Islands, and so we'll talk a little bit about Governor Albert Bryan and all the great things that he's doing, and then what's going to lead up to our next version of building wealth. Economic empowerment, but more importantly, bridging the gap between New York and the U.S. Virgin Islands. So, how are you doing, Anthony Weeks? Talk to us.
I'm good. I'm good. I think it's been actually 5 months since
Wow, really?
we successfully rolled out and did our first summit for the SETI case between the U.S. Virgin Islands and New York. And as you stated, it was a phenomenal event. But I would be remiss if I don't do this first because I
Okay.
mean we're gonna get into obviously a really deep discussion on many levels, but uh, the event obviously, like most big events,
Yeah.
comes with a lot of layers and complexities and all kinds of different verticals and the success of the SETI case New York summit between the U.S. Virgin Islands, the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, the New York Stock Exchange, the two chambers, the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce and the Greater Chamber of Commerce. I have to first acknowledge both you ladies for doing an incredible job. Let me, for the purpose of the viewing and listening audience, Carolyn, Terry tells me all the time, she gives me these testimonials where people will call her from different parts of the region and say, I saw your show from Trinidad. I saw your
Yeah.
show from Jamaica. I saw your show from New York. So I really like hearing that because it just says the message, you know, in terms of who we are, in terms of our footprint, the Colorado Alliance Media. I
Yeah.
mean, we have a very wide, broad reach in terms of our ability to connect with our audience. And so the New York tri-state area is a significant uh, relationship for us. And Terry is doing an incredible job in terms of
Thank you.
her role as managing director for SETI Case. She's the team leader in the New York tri-state area, and has been responsible for what you see by and large is the triumphant successful story of what we did in March. And of course you have, and Terry is my, these two women, these dynamic women are respective owners and founders and CEOs of their respective companies, but they both have designated responsibility as managing director, lead team member for SETI Case in these markets. And Carolyn Howell, she is the chief
My
executive officer,
sister.
founder of Events USA, and she is responsible for she is the managing director for SETI Case in the Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia area.
Yeah.
And a big part of the planning and execution of putting on and very complex, because a lot of moving parts, between the official governmental role between the governor of the Virgin Islands and the mayor of New York City. It's a little tricky when you're talking about the protocol, and then here we go now going to the New York Stock Exchange. That's like going into Fort Knox. I mean, it's an incredible place where you go through all these different layers to get in there. You can't just walk up, right, guys? You just can't walk into knocking. Hey, I'm here. I want to come in. You got to go through this tight security thing.
That's right.
And to see the job that both Terry and Carolyn did in terms of the planning, organizing, executing, I want to publicly say thank you on television, on radio, for an incredible job that both of you did, and the execution and the successful implementation and rollout and introduction of SETI CASE as a macroeconomic and public policy think tank in the New York tri-state area.
And so I echo that across the board. There was no I in team. Carolyn and I worked seamlessly together with you to make sure that it was a great experience had by all. And I think that was the main thing, New York being the economic capital of the world, the relationship between Alexander Hamilton, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and just commerce in general, and then bringing that to New York City and making sure that the government officials, the business leaders had a space and felt the experience of what we were trying to deliver on for SETI CASE. And I think that, Carolyn, Carolyn was seamless in all of the planning and organizing and just making sure all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted. And so that was a great experience. Anthony, you bringing the government of the Virgin Islands here, and of course, me making sure that we included New York City. And so there was no I in team. It was a collective approach. And so it was great. And I want to get into some of it. I want to pass the mic to Carolyn for a moment and let Carolyn reflect on some of her experience. And then I want to get into those a couple of days that we spent here and what they meant, and what that's going to lead into. Carolyn?
Well, there is no I in team, but there is an I in Terry. And I do have to say, Terry, thank you, Terry, because Anthony brought the governor. You had the connections, because there are a lot of things that need to be done. So I do want to thank the individuals that worked with us, Katie Coughlin, who you knew, and then Justin Durbin and John Tuttle. These are the ones who made it happen. So I was excited. Events USA is always ready to work with companies, organizations, municipalities, but it makes it easier when you've got a wing woman and a wing man that have the power to bring what they want. So it's easy. The paperwork behind that and how to make logistics work, that comes easily. So I think we were a pretty dynamic trio.
Yeah, we were. We did a great job. And I just want to also echo, Mayor Adams is phenomenal. And he made sure he put his stamp on it. He made sure that whatever we needed, we had it. The same thing with the stock exchange. And so I want to get into it a little bit. So Anthony, tell us a little bit about what SETI CASE is, so we can get into, the nut and bolts of what we were able to accomplish with this conference, and then what we're looking to do moving forward.
Yeah, the New York Stock Exchange venue and meeting with the senior executive level folks at the New York Stock Exchange was really truly fitting, because the reason why there is a SETI, the case is on the other side of what SETI CASE is about. But SETI, the acronym, stands for the Synchro Economic Development Initiative. Mm-hmm. The reason why SETI was created was because back in my former life as a banker, and I had a banking operation here in the Virgin Islands, I had introduced the proposal to create the Virgin Islands Stock Exchange. And then Governor John D. Young and his administration were in office. And during his tenure, it was necessary to bring both the best and the brightest from private sector and public sector, all of the heads of government agencies, to huddle for 2 days at the University of the Virgin Islands. And back then, before it became SETI, it was called the Synchro Economic Summit, or the Synchro Economic Summit. And so after the 2 days of meetings, what one of the solutions or thought process that came out of that was the need to create a think tank that was going to be responsible for all of the brain thrust from all the thought leaders in the room. Again, talking about how do we address at that moment in time, it was stagnation of St. Croix economy. For a very long time, St. Croix had this major golden goose that laid the egg and was the largest private sector employer, which was the refinery. And
Yeah.
at that point, for almost 50 years, that's what, by and large, St. Croix relied on as an economy, and obviously the feeding of the rest of the territory in terms of economic output. That was it. And so diversity or lack of diversity was an issue. Yes, we are a tourism destination, but most people don't know this. Most people think because we're in the Caribbean and we have, white sandy beach, turquoise waters, palm trees, that automatically that qualifies you as a leisure destination. St.
Right.
Croix, for all intent and purpose, is not, based on the airlines and how they assign aircraft and in terms of how they plan to service a destination. St. Croix is not a leisure destination. I know that may sound shocking and surprise to a lot of people, but it's
Yeah.
not. St. Thomas, on the other hand, is considered a leisure destination because by virtue of every major airline, every major cities can get a direct flight into St. Thomas from the United States. And because the airlines can plan out 60, 90 days out for aircraft to that destination, by virtue of that, that makes it a leisure destination. And so St. Croix, wanting to be many things, should naturally be a leisure and tourism destination. And so you have a refinery and you have tourism. So my thinking was, what was the other area of industries we can attract to help grow our economy? And being the former banker that I am, the idea was to to position U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Croix, to be the first U.S. capital market system outside the U.S. mainland in the region. And so that's why when I proposed to create a Virgin Islands Stock Exchange under former Governor Charles Turnbull, he created the Governor Stock Exchange Task Force. And by virtue of that, the Governor Stock Exchange Task Force was created, and SETI then became who we are today as the think tank that was responsible for literally thrusting the whole issue of how do we better connect, integrate, expand, and strengthen relationship between St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands, and the rest of the Caribbean, Latin America, and of course, North America. And so the other half of SETI is called CASE, which is the Caribbean America's Single Economy. That is our signature policy initiative in terms of what you see with what we've been doing, where we've literally been taking the show on the road, connecting the U.S. Virgin Islands with key major U.S. markets, starting from New England, coming all the way down to South Florida, in the eastern quarter of the country. So Terry, that's who we are and when you think of economic development, public policy, we are a nonprofit macroeconomic and public policy economic development think tank.
All right, we got it now.
I think it's important for us to set that groundwork, especially because here in the United States, when we think about the Virgin Islands, we put them all together. We put the Virgin Islands, we look at St. Thomas and say Virgin Islands, but we're also including St. Croix and St. John, right? And so when you say to folk that St. Thomas is a luxury destination and St. Croix was not, folks are kind of baffled by that because they always put them all together, believing that if you have access to St. Thomas, then you have access to St. John and St. Croix. And it's a little more difficult to get to those two places because there aren't any direct. And so this is why we are where we are. And I think it's really important for us to highlight that, to bring those connections into St. Croix, to make sure that individuals understand that it is a luxury place, that it should be more convenient to get to. It should be a place, no matter what transportation we're using, we should be able to get into both St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John equally. And so, Anthony and the SETI case have been on the ground really pushing this for a very long time. And that's why we took this initiative and brought it here, from New England all the way down, Carolyn did an awesome job in the Maryland, DC, Virginia area as well, highlighting the importance of why this should be what it is as far as a luxury destination. So, Carolyn, I'm going to pass it off to you now because, you did a phenomenal job even before we got to New York. You were making sure that key players were involved and understood, and Anthony was meeting all the key team members here on the mainland to highlight the importance of why SETI case is who we are, right? But more importantly, to highlight why we're doing what we're doing right now. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I thought, first of all, those days went by so quickly. And literally, the melling, we all meshed together to make everything work. Yes, there were certain protocols that had to be met as related to having a governor visit another state. And
Yeah.
then the protocols that involved, how do you get in and out of the stock exchange? But the New York Police Department, et cetera. So everything kicked off the very first evening with a really nice reception at the hotel. And we were all there. We were able to meet some of the individuals. And Anthony had quite a few people that came from St. Croix, in addition to the governor's advance team and his security team. So that was really nice to get to know and meet firsthand some of these people that have really deep roots and deep ties into St. Croix. So that meet and greet reception where we all got to get to know each other in advance of the very next day was exciting.
Yes,
People that we'd only met, if you will, over Zoom. Key players that had an interest in the refinery, have an interest in what travel and tourism looks like, medical tourism. It was really super exciting to finally be able to put faces with names and voices. So that was a really exciting part of the first night. I think you agree, Anthony.
Yeah, it's and you just said something that really just popped out of me. We literally put this together, an event of this stature, by Zoom call. I'm like, it's how I just stopped and thought about that. I said, wait a minute, there was no in-person meeting. The three of us are in different parts of the the region, right? And literally put together a very complex of bringing the governor of the United States Virgin Islands, the mayor of New York City, the chairman and the CEO of the New York Stock Exchange, the president of the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Chamber of Commerce. Okay, we literally put something of this magnitude together via Zoom.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And other than Terry being based there, if you will, and there were other people that had thoughts and things of how things that could be done. But once we really started to work with the New York Stock Exchange themselves, they had a lot of creative ideas about what to do. So that evening reception got us super, super excited. And then the very next morning, we walked downstairs and the NYPD was there in force.
Yes,
When I tell you the thrill of riding in SUVs driven by New York's finest with the lights and sirens on the entire time, honestly, I felt like a kid, but that was one of my most fun parts of the entire day.
And without that, I want to thank the NYPD, because if you know New York traffic, if you know what it's like getting in and out between these boroughs, it's a nightmare. Yeah. It's a literal nightmare. And without that, we would be sitting in traffic for literally 2 hours trying to get from point A to point B.
And I think the highlight for me was just having a governor here, right? I think having a governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands being down to earth, and we're going to play a little bit of our interview with him. Anthony, I know
that's later on, not during the live broadcast, Terry. Terry, we'll play that later on, not during the time we're on the air, because obviously it's a little bit tricky and it's a long video, and so we'll play that a little bit later. Yes,
to get a feeling of what that day looked like. So, can we have a couple of highlights from the U.S. from our trip here to for my kids?
I know if you heard me. What I'm saying to you, the length of the videos, all of the videos, the length of they were too big to be able to put to highlight. So we're gonna play it after this show is done, and we'll feature it that way.
Okay.
So, but let me just say this. What does this mean for the U.S. Virgin Islands and New York? The symbiotic relationship between the two of us. Like Terry said earlier, there are a couple common denominators that brings us together. Historically, when you look at the life and the just the legacy of a founding father, an American founding father, Alexander Hamilton, coming from St. Croix. We shipped him from St. Croix. He went to New York, and that's where he got educated. That's where he started his career in the military. That's where he raised his family, and that's where he founded the Bank of New York and all this other wonderful stuff. And so it was important to look at the historical perspective. But more important, though, when you think of former Mayor Dinkins, rest his soul, said that New York was the great mosaic because of the fact of the diversity, the nationality, the ethnicity, the cultural aspect, that New York literally, you think of the entire world, you can meet the entire world in New York. And the reason I say that is because the Caribbean itself, the largest concentration of the Caribbean diaspora, nowhere else in the country, the largest concentration of the Caribbean diaspora is in the New York tri-state area.
See that?
And we're talking about 3 million people.
I found that so shocking. I found that so shocking. I would have thought that the largest concentration would have been somewhere in Florida, honestly. So when you said that, that was really interesting to me, but apparently you know your numbers.
It's really interesting. Senator Schumer loves to walk in the Labor Day parade. And we call it our West Indian Day Parade, and it's funny. He'll walk up the Parkway, Eastern Parkway is where we have it here in Brooklyn, and he'll ask, where are you from? And people will say Barbados, the Virgin Islands, St. Lucia, St. Croix, Jamaica, Haiti, right? He's like, which part of Brooklyn has, the biggest island, and you can name everyone, right? And he says, which part is the biggest island? And they'll name everything. And he's like, no, Brooklyn. Brooklyn has all of these places represented here. And so we in Brooklyn, and I say this all the time, we have 2.7 million people, 250 dialects, about 69 square miles. And so anything and everything that you want, you can get here in Brooklyn, and now expand all 5 boroughs. And so what Anthony is saying is quite correct, because we have representation from every place in the world. Some people like to call it a melting pot. I call it a salad bowl, because nothing's melting together here in New York. We got everything. We got some cucumbers and tomatoes and, some lettuce. We're not melting it all together. We're respecting each other's ethnicity. We're respecting each other's culture. But more importantly, we're respecting each other. And so, the Caribbean is well represented here in the 8 million people that are New York City. And so, it is an honor to have the governor from the Virgin Islands to come to visit us, and more importantly, for us to kick off the way that we did. Carolyn, you talked a little bit about the day and how it kicked off and how we started, with our meet and greet, and we had some key players in that arena, where we had business owners as well as leaders from government talk, and then we were talking to each other. We were all in the same room, and then when we went to the stock exchange, we had an opportunity to have this roundtable discussion, a beautiful breakfast, a walkthrough, and it really kind of epitomized for me and for us what it means to be a part of this economy, right? Because we were able to see so many things on the floor of the stock exchange and off. And so, Anthony, when we're talking about Alexander Hamilton and his contributions, and we're talking about, bridging the gap in New York, I'm looking for more of this kind of synergy. I'm looking for more of us, for us to do a little more to kind of really bring it together and to make St. Croix that luxury destination, because we know it's possible. We know all of the natural resources that exist throughout the Virgin Islands. And we know we know that the transportation infrastructure can improve to really make this the hub in the Caribbean. And we've talked about it, and now it's time for us to move forward on it. And so I want to talk a little bit more about what can be done and what's the vision for our next, because this was just the beginning, right? This wasn't just a one-off. This is just the beginning of what we're going to do to make sure that the entire Virgin Islands is accessible, affordable, and that we're able to bring this synergy from mainland to the Virgin Islands. And it is the U.S. Virgin Islands, which again is really important for us to highlight.
That's so good, Terry.
So what I'm hoping when we come back from the break, Terry, when we come back from the break, we can actually get into a deeper dive specifically where the opportunities are going to emerge and how
Right.
we're going to connect businesses on both sides of the spectrum, right? And professionals on both sides of the spectrum, and how we're going to literally use the two relationship to create a stronger hub for regional trade and commerce, and the role New York as the world capital market, how then we connect New York and the U.S. Virgin Islands to really create that capital market system in the region. So let's take a quick
Right.
break. We'll
Before
come
we
back.
take a quick break, I know Carolyn had a couple of words that she wanted to share, and I don't want
Oh,
to.
and I was going to thank you on the other side of the hour, because I do want to talk about the excitement that the individuals from the New York Stock Exchange had in talking about the opportunities and kind of just how that. So I can definitely do that on the other side of the hour.
All right, so we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back on the Coaxum Report.
ICABA, ICABA, stands for the International Career and Business Alliance. And basically, it's really about building, activating relationships that grow wealth.
What is ACABA doing? ACABA is putting you in an environment where you can rub shoulders, you can actually talk to wealth creators, to entrepreneurs who may look like you, who may come from circumstances like you, who may come from an environment like your environment. And then once you go ahead and grab that baton, you might say, well, this is possible. This individual over here did it, and now I can do it. So ICABA is raising our level of vision, and they're doing a fantastic.
Today we're taking a little vacation on the west end of St. Croix, visiting a seaside restaurant called the Beachside Cafe here at Sandcastles on the Beach.
The atmosphere is just wonderful.
You just feel very welcome when you're here.
Hi!
I'd like to introduce Chris and Ted, who are the owners of Beachside Cafe and also Sandcastles on the Beach. This is amazing!
Thank you.
Sandcastle on the Beach is quiet and friendly, relaxing.
I often entertain guests, and this is the one place I always try to bring people.
Tell us a little bit about the hotel.
Well, the hotel is a 25-room hotel. We have 10 different room types within that. We also have, of course, our greatest asset, the ocean out there, which our side of the island is very calm typically. So it's the best swimming beach and also great for snorkeling.
And just walking, doing a nice walking beach tour.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Best beach access is right here, so we love them.
And we're also fortunate we have just up the way Sandy Point National Park, and then Frederickstead Town is just a mile away. Mm-hmm. And so we're really fortunate to be in this perfect spot.
I used to watch BET, MTV, VH1, now I watch Tempo. Soca, Calypso, Reggae Dancehall. Don't stall, better get tuned in to the tempo. Don't have cable, they got an app. Go to your app store, download that. Whether it's tourism, cuisine, or the social scenes, if it ain't Tempo, it's a rap. Who got the Caribbean views? Tempo. Mr. Latest in Caribbean news? Tempo. You tryna cook Caribbean food? Tempo. You know they got the music videos too? Tempo. Who got the Caribbean views? Tempo. Mr. Latest in Caribbean news? Tempo. You tryna cook Caribbean food? Tempo. You know they got the music videos too? Tempo.
Welcome back.
I love those commercials.
Especially Tempo. Anthony, no, I am so biased.
I am dancing the entire time on the Tempo.
The food commercial and Tempo, Anthony, no, I am strictly biased. He understands it.
Absolutely.
So welcome back to the Coaxum Report. For those of you that just joined us, you can catch this segment on Roku. You can catch it on Amazon Fire, on Android. You can also catch us on the radio at WSTX Bloomberg. And Tempo, of course, is our partner. This is the Coaxum Report on the marketplace, and it is powered by Callaloo. So let's get right back into the study case report, the visit here to New York City, of course, and some of the excitement around it, the great time that was had by all, but more importantly, some of the opportunities that we're going to be moving forward on. And so I want to get in that, but I'm going to toss it first to you, toss the mic to you first, Carolyn, because I know you started when we were ending, going into commercial break, talking about some of the opportunities. So I want to toss it back to you, and then we'll expand on it.
Okay, good. And honestly, really, just from a participant standpoint, so it's so nice. Oftentimes, when we're putting together events, the client has all of the experience. Well, this was an experience that the three of us got to enjoy, and it was happening in real time. So we pull up with police escorts, sirens blazing to the New York Stock Exchange, and they are ready for us. So while they've got lines of people outside that are going to go through their normal steps to get in, we've already because, we've already been vetted and ready to go. So we walk in like we own the place, even though we don't.
Don't forget about the red.
Exactly. Red carpets when we came out, but we walked in there and they instantly swept us into, there was a meeting room before we got to the breakfast room, this meeting room for this private meeting, which was absolutely amazing. And being able to talk with John Tuttle and talk with Justin Durbin. So the president and the vice president of the New York Stock Exchange Foundation, that was wonderful. Governor Albert Bryant, they brought him in a room. Virgin Islands flags were everywhere and had this incredible conversation with him. And we were shocked to find out how interested they are in having places, territories, states, whatever, come and bring rich ideas, rich opportunities to them. They really hosted us as honored guests. And I think you agree with that, Anthony. As a matter of fact, one of their key people was vacationing in the Virgin Islands, and they pulled them up on FaceTime so we could all be part of that conversation.
Absolutely. And it was to like you said, to sit there at the table in real time, having this conversation about what does it mean potentially for us to, explore new horizon for collaboration, right? And to have the key decision makers at the table, and when we say, where are some of these opportunities? And Carolyn, I'm not sure if I tell you this, but what I get all the time from this side of the table, people ask me all the time, okay, so what does all of this mean? What does that mean going forward? What are the opportunities? How does this benefit the Virgin Islands and St. Croix and the people of the Virgin Islands? And those are very, fundamental, basic questions that are relevant to, understanding this. And so what people should understand, the overarching, if you will, relevance or the merit of partnering, having the Virgin Islands partner with other key markets, and bringing both public and private sector stakeholders together. Many states and cities in the United States, when they want to attract foreign direct investment, the mayors and the governors and the economic development arms of these states and cities, they travel abroad. They go to Asia, they go to Europe, they go to Africa, and when it comes to the Americas, okay, whether it's the Caribbean or Latin America, they too are looking at how do we build a better bridge of strengthening trade and commerce relationship. And so their perception is, or the rationale is, considering the fact that the U.S. Virgin Islands is both a U.S. territory, we are Americans in the Caribbean, and the fact is, if they're going to try to facilitate and cultivate relationship in the region, they see the Virgin Islands as a valuable partner to serve as a hub, to be able to facilitate the transaction between organization, businesses, to be able to strengthen and increase trade and commerce between ourselves and the key key markets. And so just when you think foundationally, Carolyn, that's where it starts. You see what I'm saying to you?
Right.
And
Absolutely.
you get more granular, and you start talking about industries, you start talking about sectors, right? And what industries are we talking about? Earlier I said capital market. Obviously, technology being so disruptive and transformative, innovative technology is going to play a critical role. Carolyn, when I first introduced the Virgin Islands Stock Exchange, people literally thought I was proposing to be able to uproot Wall Street brick by brick.
Oh, goodness.
Wall Street to the Virgin Islands. People really thought that, you know, not realizing where technology was today, right? Back then in 2006, electronic communication network, alternative trading system are what helped to better connect financial markets around the world. And so that was the solution. Technology was going to play a big role. Why St. Croix? It was important because St. Croix has the second largest fiber optic network in the world, second to New York.
Now that is a shocker. And you exactly. that bears repeating in this same breath.
Exactly. So when you talk about the value of why St. Croix, you know, and you look at what we bring to the table, one can argue, right? You know, we have limited natural resources. So you have limited natural resources, but you can also have scarce resources. And so you look at both environments, what New York City means in this grandeur fashion of capital markets and fashion capital world. And then you look at what the Virgin Islands is all about in terms of its natural environment and how do you build better partnership to do that. And when you think of the memorandum of understanding we signed, ladies, remember, this is very important. And the listeners and the viewers of this program, we literally, Terry was responsible for bringing two major Chamber of Commerce. Collectively, each Chamber of Commerce have 30,000 members of businesses and professionals that are part of their organization. And so one of the things we will be doing, Terry, and Terry, you can expand on this, is literally in the conversation we had last week or the week before last, is the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce says, okay, now we're going to roll out our international program. What does that mean? Businesses from the Virgin Islands that are looking for market opportunities, whether it's in the New York tri-state area or overseas, the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce becomes an important asset in helping to create opportunity for Virgin Island businesses for looking for opportunities out of the Virgin Islands.
And I think it's really important. And you know, I apologize. I had a little technical difficulties and I got dropped, but I was listening. And so, you know, one of the things that you highlighted about the opportunities is more than just capital investments. Technology infrastructure is another huge investment that I think that we have synergies around that we really can change the game here. When it comes to you know, the Virgin Islands and New York, especially with Stewart at Air Force Base, and we spoke about this a little bit. Looking at how this is going to move forward is important. Having the Brooklyn Chamber on board, having the international arm of the Brooklyn Chamber on board, having these businesses be interested in doing business in the Virgin Islands and Virgin Islands doing business here in New York, I think is so important because this is how we expand, this is how we grow, and this is how we build wealth. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities. We'll get into even more of these opportunities as we get down the line. You guys have an opportunity to actually view some of the footage from the stock exchange, some of the footage from Carolyn and my interview with the governor of the Virgin Islands to better understand what his vision is for the Virgin Islands, for all of the Virgin Islands, for St. Croix, St. Thomas, and for St. John, right? And I think it's really important for those that are listening today to one of the biggest takeaways for us to get out of this conversation is the synergy is here, the opportunities are here, and we're looking to move forward in all of those things. And this is why this segment is going to be so important. We have another huge initiative plan for December, and I think it's just going to grow and expand on what we're doing now. We'll be able to bring, you know, the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce and bring the Greater Chamber of Commerce and some of their businesses to the Virgin Islands into that space to see firsthand some of these opportunities that we're discussing today, especially around technology and around the capital markets, and more importantly, around the infrastructure. And so that's why all of this is important. And we're not, we're not operating in a silo. We're literally across the board looking at each and every day at what we can do together and how we can do it better.
And
One thing I'm sorry. One thing I thought was interesting was just sometimes the sharing of ideas comes from simply being exposed to something. So when we had our tour of Industry City,
yes,
the light bulbs were going off because it's a conglomeration of small businesses, restaurants, boutique shops, and makers markets, if you will. And just thinking that they reclaimed an old office buildings or apartment buildings were reclaimed and have become this incredible revenue center, in the sense that it's exciting. You want to go there. To me, it seemed like some sort of boutique amusement park. I could have stayed there for hours. And they've got great outdoor space, great indoor space. Well, there's a lot of synergies around having small businesses and makers markets that could exist in the U.S. Virgin Islands. They have a number of buildings that could be reclaimed and used for that. So I loved hearing as the CEO of the chamber was talking with the governor about this, and then just seeing the governor and his team lighting up exactly like, oh, we could do this, and they're naming certain places where it could be done. So I love when when ideas come from just being exposed to something and the energy that brings.
Absolutely.
To look at, and because when you start looking at Industry City, or is it Industry or Industrial City?
Industry City.
Industry City, and look at what Brooklyn Navy Yard did. Brooklyn is a huge, if you will, destination for, back in the day, industrial manufacturing. It was, Brooklyn played a huge role in building ships and all kinds of other industries. And what the developers did, what the city did, and what the developers did, came together and retool those properties and convert them from being just industrial properties to a mixed-use development, multi-purpose development of all kinds of businesses and industries. It transformed the Brooklyn waterfront, right, in terms of what it used to be to what it is today. And it was just an incredible sight to see. And like Carolyn said, how do we take the same approach? While, it's great to have white sandy beach, turquoise water, palm trees, sun, all that is great. But guess what? There are tons and tons of other destinations selling the same thing. And so what really distinguishes us, right? We want more flights. We want more direct flights into St. Croix. Now, obviously, we can't cannibalize our tourism product, which St. Thomas is, right? St. Thomas is, if you will, our tourism product. St. Croix can be a lot more and much more than what it is by virtue of attracting businesses, investments, opportunity, create new industries, right? And by virtue of doing that, you now start to have a demand for direct flight from the businesses. Airlines make their profit from the corporate business travelers.
Okay, so I want to pause right there because I want to highlight what you just said, right? Because I need a listening audience to really understand what you're saying to us, right? We're saying that St. Croix can be the business hub for the Caribbean. We're saying with the Taylor Act and all of these other things that we have access to. We talked about it during our conversation about taxes and all of these things that businesses are attracted to this space and should be attracted to the space because these things exist, right? And so I don't want to just gloss over how important that this really is and can be for business. And this is the Coaxum Report. Like, we get on here every week and we talk about, we have businesses on talking about various best practices and big ideas. We're talking big ideas here. Solutions, right? We're introducing the business owners that are listening to us throughout the Caribbean, throughout the world. We're introducing them again, reintroducing them, so to speak. Jay-Z, allow me to reintroduce myself, right? We're reintroducing them to St. Croix, a space where they can do business with this backdrop of turquoise water. And
That's right. Bingo.
Right. And so, and Anthony's always downgrading that part of it. And I understand it. So one thing that was really important for me, I had been to St. Thomas a few times, and as well as to St. John. And I will tell you that St. Croix to me was the Cinderella. That was the one that was hiding in the kitchen and didn't get out. And when you find out,
in the kitchen.
princess. What I didn't realize. And so when you hear someone say that St. Croix is not their tourism product, in my mind, I was thinking, well, what is it? Is the island where they store the waste? What is it? I get there, and it is more than 84 square miles of absolute beauty.
That's right.
It's got mountains and a rainforest, and it's got, a bustling two twin cities, much like, Minneapolis, St. Paul. It's got twin cities.
Right.
It's fabulous. And I thought to myself, this is the leisure destination I'm looking for, because I want to come and get that big air and big sky and big waterfront and the greenery and everything there. And then when you meet the people. So Anthony is saying, let's not just focus on that and focus on the fact that there are, let's say we know the entire U.S. Virgin Islands, all 3 islands are hub zones. So for people that are looking at business, that's a huge deal. And St. Croix is the biggest of the hub zones. So they are 100% hub zones. So that's exciting. But then the other
Carolyn, just so important, seeing that you mentioned, because the people that are watching, listen, when you say hub zone, we'll be doing an injustice if we don't say what that is.
It is a historically underused business zone. And the government there are so many set-asides in government contracting that are designed to be placed in areas that are historically underused. So some people are looking for, and typically a company that wants to be hub zone certified, they have to place their main office in a hub zone. Well, I can't think of a better place than to have my main office than in St. Croix.
And considering the fact and considering the fact that the federal government literally spends of their spending, 3% of all federal spending are directed to hub zones. That's a huge deal for St. Croix to become that industrial, that business, not industrial, but that business environment. And then what happened, because naturally, right, the same people that are the presidents and the managers and the executives and the business owners, they're going to then have a leisure life. They're going to want to kick back and lay back and enjoy the natural, pristine environment. They're going to want to live part-time between their main base
wherever they are, big city,
right? So that's going to be baked in. It's going to be baked in.
Not only that, to get even some of your key employees to go down for purposes of training, because one of the beauty is, there is a workforce that does exist in U.S. Virgin Islands. Let me just tell you something. Just the way they have it set up, you would be crazy as a business owner. Sure, you set up your office there and you send some of your key people down to train, but you want to train Cruisians, say folks from St. Croix or St. Thomas, St. John, because they use that seaplane to get around just like we hop on the metro or on the metro bus or the metro rail, on the subway. So they will get to those places. So don't think that you're not going out to some desolate place. You're in the middle of paradise conducting business in the United States of America. That's correct. Be in the Caribbean.
That's right.
And it's like having your cake and eat it too. Seriously,
it is having your cake and eat it too.
It's like having this best kept secret, right? And no one know anything about it. I remember when Carolyn said, I know St. Thomas, but St. Croix, no.
And then I asked the question. I have to say this. Literally,
guilty as charged.
We kept talking about the U.S. Virgin Islands, and I'm telling you, that's one of those things that become white noise. You hear U.S. Virgin Islands, you say U.S. Virgin Islands, but you don't think that the U.S. stands for United States. At least I didn't, because it's like USVI, BVI, and I'm like, okay, so they're all the same. One is this and one is that, and I'm thinking it has something to do with language. None of the above. It is the United States of America in the Caribbean. But the other part is, I'll never forget, I asked Anthony, which of the 3 islands is the Virgin Islands? That was my bit. I'm telling you, trust me, I should have Googled it and kept my ignorance silent, but that's literally I knew 3 years ago. I remember saying, which of the 3? That's almost saying, which of the 50 states is America? So having gotten past that ignorance, and I will tell you, he handled it.
You're funny with that. You're funny.
He handled it with such grace. He said, well, let me just say this. You probably don't know what you just said, but all 3 of them are. You know, so that was, but that's when, so what I'm saying is there are a lot of really intelligent people out there who really don't know these key facts. So that's why this show is so important, because it brings to light well-known facts, little-known facts, but it brings to the light the tremendous opportunity that needs to be sought out.
Right. And so business, if you're looking for a location and it's broadband, you know, you can actually do your work with the backdrop of the turquoise water, right? And the sandy beaches and the beautiful weather, but get your work done, because work is being done. I mean, I had the awesome pleasure of serving under the Obama administration, and the Virgin Islands being one of my spaces in region 2. I had a lot of great opportunities to actually do so much wonderful work there. When I first went on, there was a refinery there, and so we were able to have conversations and roundtables and build the economy and bring mainland banks and do all the wonderful things that needed to be done. And so I encourage those that are listening to us today, these are some best practices. These are some great ideas, and these are some solutions to how you can conduct your business even better right in this hub, the Caribbean, the Taylor Act, and all of these, a hub zone, and all of these awesome things that exist and opportunities that exist, the tax breaks that exist. This is a way to do business. And so that's why, you know, we had this show today. And again, when I have these shows, we talk about the barriers, the best practices, and the big ideas. But this big idea, these best practices are things that I hope that our listening audience is going to really take a hold of and look more into it, and more importantly, get some more business into St. Croix, so that we can continue to grow and expand on what we already know is a wonderful space to do business in.
And the last year we did not forget, but we saved the best for last, was education and workforce development.
Yeah,
Terry and being an educator, teaches at Medgar Evers colleges. We're going to form partnership with other academia,
right,
where there's specific skill sets for training and education
That's
to help better train and develop our workforce, so we can attract those industries. Industry is not going to come if you don't have the labor force, if you don't have the human capital to make it attractive for them to relocate here. And so one of the things we would be doing with these key markets, in the particular case of New York, we're going to partner with other SUNYs and CUNY institution between our University of the Virgin Islands and other workforce development organization to better train, educate, and develop our workforce as well for those opportunities that are.
And some don't know, but the Virgin Islands, the University of the Virgin Islands, is a historical Black college university.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's another, I mean, the benefits just keep
and the horticulture and all of these other opportunities that exist as well.
All right.
IT part, you know, I mean, we could go on. We love the U.S. Virgin Islands. We had this great opportunity to bring this delegation to New York. We'll have an opportunity to take this delegation from New York to the U.S. Virgin Islands. We're looking forward to doing that in December. But more importantly, just want to really highlight the importance of doing business in both spaces, and how we can take these synergies and mesh them together and do much better, build wealth, grow wealth, have access to capital through, you know, hub zone funding and other access to capital. And so this is really an exciting time to think about doing business in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And I just want to thank both Carolyn and Anthony for being a part of the show today, and highlighting what we were able to do in our conference here in New York, and then just to touch on, and you'll have more information forthcoming about what we're going to be doing in the Virgin Islands in December. Any last thoughts? I know it's
yeah. I mean, like you said, Terry, you know, I know you wanted to feature some of these things, but what I did was I figured it was best to really run during prime time the entire New York experience, what we did in New York. We broadcasted before. And so tonight at primetime, we're going to broadcast the New York Summit, and you'll see all of the things that we talked about today and a lot more. And you'll get to see the optics of just exactly what we talked about, exactly what happened on our TV network here on the network. And so if you want to watch it tonight, obviously you can, I'll speak to Josh to see whether or not we can air it on radio as well. We simulcast it on radio while we're doing it on television. but it's www.ourtv.network, and you'll be able to watch it at 8 o'clock tonight, the New York Summit, and all the wonderful things that took place.
And then the other thing is, Carolyn, like I said, Carolyn and I had an awesome interview with the governor, and we will be running that again as well. We'll highlight when we'll be doing that so that you can get the blow-by-blow conversation, very robust conversation and the vision that Governor Albert Bryan has for the Virgin Islands moving forward, and the excitement around what we did here in New York. So we will be airing that again as well, and we'll let you know when that happens. So, Carolyn, any last thoughts?
No, just that it was fantastic. This was a great part one. Can't wait for the part two. I know we look forward to all of the things that brought, but just for anybody, educate yourself. Find out more, find out how you can do business. And always on the Coaxum Report, Terry, you're going to be there to help people understand how they can do better business everywhere. And the U.S. Virgin Islands is one of those everywhere places.
Absolutely. And that's a way to end. Thank you, guys.
All right, guys. Thank you so much, guys.
Report. Take care.
All right.